Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Bro Watch, a series of videos on this channel, not to be confused with Baywatch, it's the most popular TV show in the world, where I take videos served up to me by YouTube's algorithm and put them through the wood chipper for your entertainment. The algorithm, as you know, if you're on YouTube, finds things by a metric that's largely mysterious and serves them up to you. And quite a few of the videos that I get aren't really worth talking about in any way. That I don't even understand why the algorithm serves them up to me. But quite a few others I do understand the connection, because I have made more book-related content than anyone else on YouTube. And I am a working book critic and a working editor. It makes sense to me in a way that the algorithm would show me videos that are book or reading related. And the unfortunate part of that is that sometimes those overlap with BroTube videos, which is a smaller subset of those videos in which life hack gurus of one kind or another seek to give advice to famously biddable and aimless young men between the ages of 18 and 25. That is a booming market. There is gold in them that are incels, as many, many charlatans and frauds have learned in the last 10 years. Before those famously aimless young men between the ages of 18 and 20 and 25 latch on to some disastrous personality cult and end up picking off people at a nightclub, they are willing to pay a huge chunk of their disposable income for life advice that reaffirms their prejudices, that tells them they are a victim, that they are misunderstood, and that success can be theirs with very little in the way of effort. That's a booming industry, and that booming industry is part of a much larger ecosystem on YouTube that I like to refer to as LieTube. And that is the enormous percentage of content uploaded onto YouTube every day, every hour, the enormous percentage of content that is lying in every word and gesture and implication from start to finish, completely lying about everything. The greatest influx of sheer bald-faced mendacity that the human race has ever seen. Unfortunately, BroTube advice channels that would otherwise be so harmless as to be, ignorable, are often part of LieTube. And worst of all, sometimes those elements mix together in connection with my own patch, with my own bailiwick, books and reading. And that feels extra offensive. I'm sure that it does to you too. It feels extra offensive because books are so personal and so incredibly honest. Even when they're lying, books are incredibly honest because our encounters with them are done in silence and in privacy, where the lies will be tested against us without any demagogues around, without any crowds to please or defy. It's an intensely honest process. And to have it BroTubed, to have it touched or subsumed by part of LieTube is extra angering. It's extra angering, especially since, if not the BroTube scam artists themselves who make the videos, because they are lying so much of the time, they are just knowingly lying every word out of their mouth. If not them, then certainly their 18 to 25 male audience strikes me as a demographic that I would like to help. Genuinely help. Not lie to for my own personal financial bottom line, but genuinely help. I have helped a great number of those young men in my life, but of course I don't have anything like the reach of someone who has 1 million subscribers on YouTube, or 2 million or 10 million, who might have the world's most popular podcast from which they can say any kind of nonsense that comes into their shaved head without even thinking about the ramifications, without even caring. All I want are their clicks. All I want is their money. If they give me that, then I don't care if they act on what I say or not. When the lying of LieTube touches on the world of books and reading, it feels extra infuriating to me. When the algorithm serves up to me a video in which some well-coiffed young thing says, "Oh, I'm going to try an experiment, guys. I'm going to take all the time from my screen time as reported on my cell phone and make it reading time. Because I just love reading. I just love books. And every time I check the analytics on my iPhone, the amount of screen time I see is just, it's like really bad. It's like a really bad vibe. So what I'm going to do in the next week, the experiment I'm going to perform, is to take the number from the screen time reported on my phone and make it reading time. I'll report back every day. And what follows is a video that's just long enough to make monetization, in which the person is lying every step of the way. Every single element of that is a lie. The person doesn't check their analytics on their iPhone for screen time usage. If the person did, they wouldn't care what the screen time usage were, because they're on their phone all the time. All the time. So also the line about how I love reading is a lie. Just a complete lie. I haven't read a book since you got your iPhone, your first iPhone. You haven't read a single book since then. And also, you're not going to conduct this experiment. It's not like you're going to decrease your screen time. It's not like you're going to read. And even the practicalities of the 18-minute video, where you have you're flopping down on your bed. Oh, hi guys. Okay, today's I was really feeling the lack of the screen time. I'm finding it hard to push through. We'll see how it goes tomorrow. Then you're flopping down on the bed. Oh, okay guys, today's a little harder. I really thought it'd be easier by now, but I'm having trouble concentrating. And then you flop down on the bed. Different outfits every time. And say, oh, I think I've turned the corner. I'm falling in love with reading all over again. And now a word from my sponsor, Audible. When, in fact, even that part of the video is a lie. You filmed the whole thing in one afternoon. You petulantly changed outfits 5 times. And you're lying about that as well. You didn't take a week to do this. This is not an ongoing sociological experiment. And the reason why is obvious. Because you never intended to conduct the experiment. You aren't going to decrease your screen time at all. If anything, you're going to increase it as you check the results of how people are responding to this lying video. Or the algorithm will serve up a video where an alleged devout reader, turns a smurfish smile to the camera and says, I'm gonna change. I want to diversify my reading. It means everything to me. Reading means so much to me. I want to diversify my reading. So I'm going to read only Asian books for the next week. 1 Asian book a day. And we'll see how that feels. We'll see how my reactions to them are at the end. Won't this be fun? And then the cutbacks. You flop down on the bed. Okay, guys, for day number 1, here's the book that I read today. Flop down on the bed. 10 pounds of product in your hair. But I just woke up. Yeah, you didn't wake up. You need an hour. You're like a Hollywood star. You need an hour to present yourself to the camera every morning with 5 pounds of carcinogenous product in your hair. You don't care. You're never going to get old. You're never going to be responsible for anything else that you do or say. So you flop down on the bed a 3rd time. This 3rd book, I don't know, it was the most complex of the bunch. You're not filming these over the course of a week. You're filming them in one afternoon, where you petulantly throw off one perfectly pressed outfit in order to put on another perfectly pressed outfit. Maybe with the help of a terrified friend, someone who used to be a friend, who's now a paid underling, and who you will yell at if the outfits look too similar, if the colors bleed on camera, or whatever. Maybe that, maybe not. But one way or another, you're not reading the books either. You're reading the Wikipedia summaries and maybe some Goodreads reviews, but you're not reading the books, because independent outside observation of your life day to day proves that you don't devote the time necessary to read a book at your reading speed. So you're just quantifiably not doing it. It's just, the whole thing is a lie. The whole thing is designed to make reading, which, come on, let's face it, is really boring, into some kind of a fun game, into a clickable game, into something that will get clicks, that will get traffic. Traducing, desecrating this thing that we all love, this thing called reading, desecrating it into clickbait. When the algorithm serves me up things like that, I tend to pounce. I certainly watch those videos, and the only reason why I don't make BroTube videos about every single one of them is because if you've been watching this channel, you know that something relatively horrifying happened the last time I made a BroTube video. My subscription number jumped up by leaps and bounds. It took a week for it to settle down again, and I don't necessarily want that, right? Especially if, as I have to assume, most of those new subscribers are coming from the BroTube world and are therefore going to be bored spitless by what they find on this channel, which is actually about books, not lying about books, not making a gimmick out of books. Hey guys, I went through my shelf and I color coordinated. Isn't it cool? Because books are boring otherwise, right? But now all the red colored books are together. Or, hey guys, I went through my shelves looking for every author who has my first name. I'm going to read them all in 1 week. Won't that be fun? Or, hey guys, I read in the course of a week every book that was suggested by a fictional character on a TV show. I don't have any reading desires of my own. I don't read. Instead, I'm going to make a game out of this lie, because otherwise, how could we jazz up something as dumb as reading? Every time the algorithm serves me up fresh meat like that, I pounce on it. But I don't always make videos because I'm not sure what I would do with 50,000 subscribers. I'm not sure what that would be like, and I'm not eager to find out. But I do get suggestions from all of you, because a lot of you like seeing these things fed into the wood chipper. A lot of you understand immediately what a lot of these dude bro channels think no one can tell. A lot of you can watch them for 5 seconds and say, all right, this guy's lying. It's just everything he's saying is a lie. It's all a lie. This is all just a pretense to get clicks, to get traffic, to get subscribers. A lot of you can see that in 5 seconds, and a lot of you see those kinds of videos and send them to me. Because the email that I leave on every video, unlike those BroTube channels, is not a dummy that I have a second cousin once removed who's on my payroll and who I scream at every day, who doesn't ever say, hey, Joey, we're cousins. Don't you dare scream at me. What on earth? Who never actually says that, because everybody will do anything for money in the 21st century. It's not like the emails that you get on those channels. It's not going to a merch store. It's not a dummy email that a second cousin once removed checks every month or 2 months. It's my email, and a lot of you send me links to BroTube videos specifically designed to wind me up. But there is also strata of people out there. There's a large group of you who have one name in mind all the time when it comes to BroTube watching. And it's not a name you want me to feed into the wood chipper. I've noticed this. It goes across a whole bunch of people, dozens and dozens and dozens of people who don't know each other. And the reaction, the feel of the emails when they suggest videos or when they just name the person the reaction's always the same. The feel is always the same. And that is not a kind of, oh, I can't wait for Steve to tear this person apart for being the obvious fraud that they are, but rather a kind of wariness. I watched this guy on YouTube, and I think he qualifies for what you're talking about, but I really like him. I really like his channel. I'm almost afraid. I've lost count of how many times people have sent me links to this guy's channel and said, I'm almost afraid to send you this because there's a big part of me that doesn't want to see you feed him into the wood chipper. I actually want to believe in this guy, just a little. I want to believe in this guy. The guy is Ryan Holiday. I'm sure that a lot of you know that name because a lot of you have suggested him to me. And the algorithm suggested him to me long before you suggested him to me, because he runs a channel called the Daily Stoic. I have some notes on it here. And last time I watched it, it had 304,000 subscribers. And his videos get an average of, a minimum, a baseline of 20,000 views. So his numbers are stratospheric compared to mine, of course, compared to any of ours on the BookTube era of BookTube. The reason why the YouTube algorithm suggests Ryan Holiday's Daily Stoic video channel to me, I'll leave a link to his channel down below. The reason why it suggests it to me is because a huge amount of his content has to do with reading. And we're going to get to that. We're going to talk about that because I have watched a number of his videos, but only sporadically when the YouTube algorithm suggests them. And then finally, one of you sent me an email and said, you might as well bite the bullet. The suspense is killing me. Basically, you wrote and said, the suspense is killing me. Sooner or later, you're going to get around to this guy. And if he's going to get the hammer and pitons approach, I'd rather get it out of my way. I'd rather get it out of the way right away. If you're going to tear him apart as an obvious fraud and charlatan, I'd really appreciate it if we could just get it out of the way and get it over with so you can move on to far more ambiguous, less ambiguous topics. So I'm doing that today. Today is Ryan Holiday's time on BroTube. And the reason why I call a Daily Stoic channel a BroTube channel should be fairly obvious. Stoicism in its all of its incarnations over 2,000 years is very much dude bro. It is very much BroTube material, even before there was a YouTube. It is a philosophy. You know, if you've been watching this channel, you know what I think about formal philosophy. Stoicism is no exception. If you live your life by a philosophy, then you are cutting and pasting the sloppy parts of your life to fit that philosophy. And that is never anything but bad. That is never anything but bad. In addition to how heartless it is, how heartless it inevitably ends up being, it's also fairly silly. I mean, this is the life you have. You don't have any other. Why would you put it on the bed of Procrustes and cut off parts of it that don't fit instead of adapting to it? One way or another, Stoicism is, I'm sure that you can Google it, you can Wikipedia it there. It has become a very popular, revanchist thing in the 21st century as a philosophy to adopt, and it is exclusively male. Now, I know immediately some of you are going to sing out and say, no, there are female Stoicism channels, or no, I myself am female and a Stoic, but let's be honest, okay? These guys, and it's always guys, they talk about first of all, they talk about the famous Stoics, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius. They don't ever talk about the wife of Marcus Aurelius. And second, they buy completely into the world framing of Stoicism is that life is a battle. That you get up every day and there are forces arrayed against you. It is very much a tabletop gaming Roman Empire role play. And it's almost exclusively masculine in the way that it views the world. No Stoicism bro-tuber ever mentions that their wife is also a Stoic. That would be, I'm sure that they would consider that to be an insult. Because listen to how Stoics talk about other people. Ryan Holiday himself has done seminars, TED Talks, whole chapters and books on practicing saying no to people. That the world, once you step outside your home base, your man cave, the world is just full of parasites and lamprey eels just waiting to latch onto you. You have to practice how to disregard them, how to consider them, to unperson them in your mind. You're not supposed to be rude to them, but they're not real people. And also how to say no to them, how to refuse their demands everywhere, down the line. The complete polar opposite of the anti-Stoic, who was the inspiration for Christianity, who famously instructed his adherents to give to everyone who asks of you. Give all the time. Give of yourself all the time. One way or another, naturally, Stoicism, being a formal philosophy, works my one good nerve. And if there is any more prominent proponent of Stoicism on YouTube than Ryan Holiday, I have not seen him. Ryan Holiday is all about Stoicism. Mentions it in every video. Has written, I believe, 11 books, owns his own bookstore, and gives talks all the time, and Stoicism crops up in all of it. He also does podcasts, I think he mentioned, and has newsletters, one of which is the Daily Stoic, where you get a little Stoicism slice of wisdom every day to get you through the worldly struggle that men have to endure. I don't think I'm wrong in characterizing this as bro-tube material. I know a whole bunch of men between the ages of 18 and 25 who flirt with or try to adopt the Stoic philosophy, what they call the Stoic philosophy, and I don't know one of them that wouldn't just be flat out bewildered by even the raised concept that a woman could do this as well. Even though the women in the age of Seneca and Marcus Aurelius had just as many of life's slings and arrows to put up with as the men did, and they also had to have childbirth. Which if Marcus Aurelius had ever had to give birth to a child, I assure you, his meditations would be just wah, wah. They wouldn't be anything flinty and reserved and stoical. They would be full of complaints. In this case, as in most cases, most women in history have been the ultimate Stoics. Most of the young men who adopt Stoicism as a philosophical guide to life, I would argue, including Ryan Holiday, would find that kind of contention just mystifying. So I don't think I'm wrong to consider this a candidate for Bro Watch. And there are 3 videos that I want to mention to you. 3 videos that I'll leave a link to specifically. I'll leave a link to his channel, just in case you're interested in Stoicism. You're never going to find a more eloquent proponent of Stoicism than Ryan Holiday. That's never going to happen. But the algorithm suggested him to me not because of Stoicism. I'm pretty sure that even the YouTube algorithm knows what I think about philosophy. Just live your life. Okay? Just live your life. But one way or another, the reason why the algorithm suggested videos to him, specifically videos of his to me, was because they're about reading. So I thought we'd go through those videos and see what they say, and whether or not there's any value to them. Value being a key word in BroTube circles. And much as all of your obvious affection for Ryan Holiday had me predisposed to like him, a thrill of horror went through me when I watched the first of these videos, and he no sooner starts the video than he mentions ROI, return on investment, about reading. But we'll get to it, because the video in question here is 5 reasons to read more. That's the video that he opens with ROI, return on investment, which is a BroTube standby phrase. I'm not sure that Ryan Holiday would extend it to in quite the maniacal way that a lot of BroTube channels do, where they apply ROI to everything, including personal relationships. But in his videos, I gather that Ryan Holiday is the father of 2 children, in which case he cannot possibly be measuring the metrics of his human relationships by ROI, unless he's dealing in intangibles, and ROI is not supposed to do that. One way or another, in 5 Reasons to Read More, he gives 5 reasons why you should read more. And I thought we'd go through those and see what we make of them. The first one is an odd thing, in that it's a moral duty. He says it's a moral duty to read more. That all these people, all throughout history, have not only poured their experiences into the books they've written, but that those books are right there and free for you to try, that they're easily accessible to you. Whereas, as Ryan Holiday alludes in that video, and as I've said many, many times, countless thousands of people have groaned in ignorance without access to that sort of thing, either because they weren't literate or because books were a precious commodity locked away from common people. People have not only groaned in desire to have that knowledge, but they've also died for it in some horrible ways, burned at the stake, in order to disseminate more of those books. You live in a world where thousands and thousands, millions of books are free and literally at your fingertips. You live in a world where you don't have to walk 5 miles to the nearest monastery library and ask permission from the monks, get in the good graces of the superintendent there in order to have access to their library, a tiny library for probably 400 books, maybe once a month, if you're good. You don't live in a world like that. You live in a world where the entire collected wisdom and written material of the entire universe that we know of is at your disposal 24 hours a day, easily. There is a kind of moral case here. There is a kind of case for reading being a moral duty, therefore. But we'll move on. We'll move on to his next one, which is to understand the present. He throws you a little curveball in this first video by saying that reading is an excellent way to understand the present. Now, he goes on to elaborate on this point in ways that I thought were revolting, where apparently on his channel he has often said, don't read the news, don't watch the news, don't inform yourself about the news. It'll just be in an information bubble. It won't be reliable. Instead, read Thucydides, read books, and that way you will inform yourself about the world. Not only is that grossly irresponsible, talk about a moral duty. The United States came an inch away from an authoritarian takeover of a 200-year-old democracy, largely at the hands of people who don't obey this, largely at the hands of people who don't pay any attention, don't sift their daily news sources, don't try to figure out what's happening in the world. Maybe who read books, just the wrong books, the Turner Diaries, for instance. Not only that, but where would the books that some of the books that Ryan Holiday most esteems, where would those books be if their authors had done the same thing? Thucydides wasn't contemplating the distant past. He was writing a book about the news. It wouldn't exist if he hadn't done it. So, but one way or another, to understand the present does have a very immediate and valuable application, which is that you will understand the resonances. Human behavior doesn't change. The patterns of human behavior, and especially national behavior, don't change. So the more informed you are about the past, the better you will understand the present. But that is no call not to stay informed about the present. No call at all. But anyway, I don't want to argue with him the whole time here. We'll move on to the next one. The next one is very interesting. Reason number 3 to read more is to stop being illiterate. And you might think, well, if you're illiterate, you won't read at all. But here he refers to a quote, a little nugget. We're going to get to this particular BroTuber's over fascination with little nuggets. But he gives a little nugget from General Mattis, no less, about how functional illiteracy happens when you don't read widely enough, you don't read enough, you don't read deeply enough, so that you're not technically illiterate, but you're not making the proper use of that moral duty. You're not exercising it to the fullest extent. So you are functionally illiterate. I don't know that I like the term because illiterate is an insult. It shouldn't be. It should be a call for help. I've known 5 or 6 genuinely illiterate adults in my life, and there isn't one of them. Oh my God, there wasn't one of them that didn't dream all day and all night of getting through that golden door. They just felt incredibly embarrassed or wounded. They knew they would be insulted. They knew they would be mocked. They thought that it would be really silly for them to go to their local library and go to the children's section and take out a small beginning reading book. They couldn't imagine doing it when they were breadwinners. In one case, the father of 6. They couldn't imagine doing it, but there was nothing they wanted more. So it shouldn't be an insult. But nevertheless, even though I might disagree with the terminology here, I do agree with the sentiment, which is that if you only read a little, it's basically the same thing as not reading at all. You should read a lot, deeply. Then reason number 4 to read more is wonderful. And it is, as Ryan Holiday puts it, to soften solitude. He starts off with the world is a lonely place, and that the attitude and the phrasing to soften solitude is wonderful. That's a wonderful phrase. But when he says the world is a lonely place, he is on a slippery slalom straight back to the slough of stoicism, because that's the world that stoicism invokes. The world is a cold, lonely, adversarial place where no one's ever going to give you your due, no one's ever going to care about anything, where you're surrounded by enemies and it's bleak and it's lonely, and you have to love what you can't change. You have to love what happens. You have to love the adversity. You have to be there for it. And that isn't true. As you all know, that isn't true. The world is totally indifferent. It's people who make the world lonely or adversarial or ugly or any of the kind. It's people who do that, and it's people who routinely alleviate those systems as well, as you all know. And when you are a cod stoic of the 21st century origin, and you start your day or start a video by saying the world is a lonely place, the first thing I want to know is, what does Mrs. Holiday think about that? Would she agree with you that the world is a lonely place? Would your kids agree with you that the world is a lonely place? Aren't they part of your world? Except in your B-roll footage, and we'll get to B-roll footage. Oh, you believe you me, we will. The world is not any more of a lonely place than it's not a lonely place in a pointed way. Of course, this sentiment, the world is a lonely place, has always been a little mystifying for me. According to UNESCO's latest estimate, I have several million best friends on this planet. I have never been lonely for a single moment. I have never had any long stretch of time where I have been without canine companionship. But I understand what it means, and certainly we've mentioned on this channel before, there is a genuine, documentable loneliness epidemic striking the Western world and the Eastern world, striking the world just in general. So one way or another, although I might not agree with the superstructure, the point is wonderful, which is that when you read, you are communing with people in their, if you're reading really good books, honest books, if you're not reading YouTube books, if you're not reading YouTube books, then you'll be reading something where you find yourself communing with an author. Sometimes, most times, an author who's long dead or who's long distanced from you. You're never going to meet them in person. And that does alleviate solitude. That reading is done in solitude. It is done alone. But it is incredibly companionable. All these people on these shelves here, I know. I feel like I know them. I feel like I've had conversations with them. So it does soften solitude in that sense of the word. And then the 5th reason to read more is the one that you might think would have been the first, which is connect with the past, to understand the past better. And although Ryan Holiday doesn't put it like this, I often do, to understand that the past is full of the present. The past is full of people who didn't know they were in history. And once you realize that, it really does put your world, your life in perspective in a way that I don't think anything else can. So when we look at this one video, 5 reasons to read more, although I might disagree with the terminology of some of the reasons, I agree with all 5 of them. Not each one to the extent that Ryan Holiday says it, but each one of them. It's a moral duty to read more. I'm not sure that I would have had the courage to say that outright, but it is true. To understand the present, to stop being illiterate, functionally illiterate, to soften solitude, and to connect with the past. Those are all 5 fine reasons to read more. And then the next video that the algorithm suggested to me was how to read more. At the beginning of which Ryan Holiday says, okay, well, I've given you the reasons, 5 reasons why you should read more. But what about doing it? How do you do it? We all know how to read, right? It's a question of incorporating the habits of reading into your life. And he has, as far as I could see in the video, he has 4 ways to do that. This video, he says that he reads a lot, between 100 and 200 books a year. We have to keep, I smirked a little, of course, because I do nothing but read. And if I read 100 to 200 books a year, I'd be out of a job. But we have to keep in mind that according to the latest statistics, that is extremely good. That is a lot of books. But he gives 4 tips on how to read more. Number 1 is find the time of day that works for you and read in that time of day. So if, like, for instance, you are like my little miniature schnauzer and you're not a morning person, where you're molecularly incoherent until 11 in the morning, just scattered everywhere. And I'm not talking as an after effect of being over caffeinated the night before or drunk the night before. I'm saying some people are just like that. Their circadian rhythms are just like that, where they just aren't morning people. If you are like that, then the morning, of course, will be a bad time to read. If you are clear and sharp as a bell in the morning, but by the time you're ready to go into your human coma for 9 or 10 hours every night, the way you people insist on doing, if by the time you get to bed and you've got the nightlight on and you've got a book on the nightstand and you're thinking, do a little reading, but you know from looking at your own life that by the time you get to that point, you are fried and frazzled. Well, fried and frazzled is not a good mind frame in which to read. And these are judgments you have to make for yourself. But tying reading to a time of day certainly is a good functional tip. Try it and see. Are you really generally unoccupied for a stretch of time in the middle of the day and sharp as a tack? Well, then put your reading there. Don't put something else there. Don't doom scroll during that period. Instead, if you really want to read more, try reading at the times when you know you'll get lots of reading done. That's a fine piece of advice. Then the next one, number 2, is bewildering to me, and is one of the only giveaways that these videos touch at all on the standard BroTube ecosystem. It's going to be bewildering to you too, so settle yourself. Number 2 is the second piece of advice for how to read more is to read a page a day. Dedicated, diehard readers like the ones who are watching me would consider reading a page a day to be a punishment. Of course, you're going to read a page a day. You're going to read many pages a day. This advice is aimed, I think, this particular piece of advice is aimed, I think, at people who don't read at all. I think this is one of the points in this video where he is talking not to readers who want to read more, but to people who don't read at all, which is 99% of the adult population. 99% of the adult population never reads a book after they get out of school, after they've been forced to read it. Never reads anything after that. And people like that who might be, I'm not a reader at all, I don't read at all, haven't read since school, I just can't get into it. People like that might want some advice on the very basics. How do I actually get started? And for people like that, read a page a day might be a valuable piece of advice. Then the next one is number 3 is build a practice. And here Ryan Holiday endeared himself to me in one of many ways in which he endeared himself to me. I'll get to the others. By saying engage with your book, and not just intellectually. Some of you who don't like dog earing are not going to like watching this video of his any more than you like watching me do it. But he suggests, what does he say? Take notes, highlight, write in, argue with the author in the margins, dog ear pages. Keep a commonplace book where you take what you've annotated and argued with in the book and put it somewhere else for easy reference. In other words, make a process out of it. Engage with the book that you're reading. Don't just passively absorb it. Needless to say, I wholeheartedly echo this. That's what you should do. That is the best way possible to incorporate reading as a vital part of your life, is to dig into it. Don't do it gently. Don't do it passively. So that's a piece of advice on how to read more. Once you get into that, once you start doing that, you're going to love it. It's not just that you're going to love the books more. You're going to love that interaction. You're going to love that a lot, and it will make you want to read more. And then the last thing is reread books. Another thing that made me endear myself to Ryan Holiday is that he strongly advises rereading books and makes the central point that I always try to make about rereading, which is not that the book changes, it's that you change. You change. If the book is the hard wrought and deeply sincere product of a writer's creativity, then there are going to be things in it that you're not going to see the first time. And even if you see everything the first time, you will be a different person in a year or 2 years, and that person will be seeing different things. That's the magic of books. So, and that is the key to rereading. That's why you do it. It's not necessarily just because you're expecting the book to change or that you're gonna find things you didn't see the first time. It's that you will change, and it enhances things. In his video, Ryan Holiday mentions, well, the people say, well, how can I read more books? And he sometimes rejoins to them, well, why don't you read more of the books you've already read? Why don't you revisit books you've already read? I wholeheartedly second that. I wholeheartedly support it. But then a third video that the algorithm suggested for me from this particular BroTube, I won't call him a huckster. We'll get to that. Well, I'm going to wrap up in just a minute here. The third video was a 3-step system for reading like a pro. A very BroTube title, a very clickbaity title. But then again, I'm not going to fault this guy for that because he is very much running a YouTube channel. His channel, Daily Stoic, is not at all like this channel. Obviously, since he has nearly 1 million subscribers, his channel is very much a YouTube channel. So when he's done talking to you, and he shoots B-roll footage, he edits, he has all sorts of montages, he has visual effects, and when he's done with his video, when he's done talking to you, then he goes through the whole complement of YouTube things. Here's where you can find me everywhere else online. Here's all the other money-making opportunities of mine that you can support if you want to. Here's where I am. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what you can do to help the channel. Here are all the ancillary money-making side hustles. He ends every video that way because his YouTube channel is very much a YouTube channel. He's talking to you during the videos, but it's a business that he's running. And if it didn't make him money, I don't think he'd do it. So you have to be prepared for that. If I've intrigued you about Ryan Holiday's Daily Stoic channel and you want to give it a look, I should warn you ahead of time that you're going to get that. And if that really bothers you, maybe you want to steer clear or do it in micro doses. But at the beginning of his video, How to Read Like a Pro, the clickbaity title, How to Read Like a Pro, he says, in a way, I guess I'm a professional reader. Which naturally got my ears pricked because I am a professional reader. I am a professional book critic and book editor. It turns out that when he says he's a professional reader, he's stretching the blanket just a little. He's written 11 books, and he correctly points out that if he's not reading all the time, he can't write those books. And he's an author. I'm not sure that collecting quotes from books and writing books makes you a professional reader. And I'm not 100% sure if we were to do an actual stylometric breakdown of all of Ryan Holiday's reading in any given year, let's say 2020, and not talking about his reports of his reading, but the actual words that crossed his eyes, I'm not 100% sure that at least 50% of the reading that he did, in other words, I'm talking about the text that his eyes are looking at, I'm not 100% sure that at least 50% of that text wasn't his own. I think there's a chance, I'm not going to say one way or another, I don't know this kid, but I think there's a chance that a significantly greater portion than 50% of the things that he read in 2020 were his own words. So, if that's true, and I think I might be right, 50% I think would be lowballing it, but if we say 50%, let's say even 40%, then I'm not sure you can call yourself a professional reader. I'm not sure it counts if what you're reading is your own prose. But one way or another, he opens the video by saying, I took it in the most generous way possible, which you should as well, which is that he is heavily invested in reading. Heavily invested in it. His channel is redolent with reading throughout. Obviously, because he has a life philosophy, a religion, that derives from books. And it's also, his channel is also heavily invested in writing, in keeping a journal. And we'll get to that. That'll be a different video. But he correctly says you can't really be a Stoic without keeping a journal. I like that, of course. Not the Stoicism part, but the journal keeping part. We'll get to that. I will touch on journal keeping again in another video. A lot of you wanted me to go back to talking a little bit more about keeping a journal, and I'm happy to do that. But in this video, he gives you 3 tips, a 3-tip system for reading like a pro. Number 1 is read with a pen, read printed books in order to take time away from a screen And again, as in the previous video, beat the crap out of your books. Highlight them, dog-ear the pages, annotate them, argue in the margins, involve yourself in the book. I think it's interesting, the initial point about getting away from screen time. I do a lot of reading on the screen. He says that he watches screens all the time, that he spends way too much time looking at screens. I've heard this from a lot of you who look at screens for your job. And that has become a big 20th century part of reading printed paper books, is to get you away from that. Fine, one way or another. I'm not sure that books on a screen deserve the stigma that they get. I have always found it to be every bit as absorptive as reading on a printed page. You still lose yourself in a book when you're reading on a screen. But if it's an eye thing, if it's an ocular thing, if you just want to get away from screens, that's fine. But one point on which I can wholeheartedly agree with Ryan Holiday is the part about involving yourself in your books. Now, some of you take very good care of your books, and some of you collect them. And so maybe that won't be true for you, and maybe you do this kind of reading elsewhere, or maybe you think that it's a little childish. One way or another, I couldn't do without it. I am very hard on my books. I beat the crap out of them. I annotate and marginalize all the time with them, and love it that way. I get a lot more out of it that way. I'm not sure that I don't do to the extent the other tips that Ryan Holiday gives. The second one is how to organize what you read. And here he's building up to something, but he's not quite there yet. His second tip is how to organize what you read. Keep note cards. In other words, keep a filing system. Pick the parts. Make sure that you have at your fingertips the parts of what you're reading that are the most valuable to you. And it's in this moment in all of his reading videos that Ryan Holiday shows the one aspect of his life as a reader that I don't like, that I really urge you against. And that is the inorganic nature of it. He is essentially a magpie. He's going through these books, no matter how profound they are, no matter how eloquent they are. He has fallen, I believe, into the bad habit of going through those books, picking out things that he thinks he can use later on for a book of his own, or for conversation, or for a TED Talk. And that's bad. I mean, there's no right or wrong way to read, but that's a fairly barren experience of a book. An author didn't write the book to be used that way. And when you use the book that way, you are missing far more than you're getting from what you're reading. Nevertheless, that's his second tip, is to organize what you read. And then the third one is how to use what you read. And this is where he goes full magpie, because he suggests keeping a commonplace book. But the thing that he then shows you, I have seen from many working authors. Ryan Holiday is a working author. He is always working on a book. And he has a number of them to his name, 11 books, when he's a young guy. And what he shows you is not a commonplace book. I've known many authors who showed me, personally, some equivalent of what he puts on camera in this third video. It's a huge box, full of those aforementioned note cards, full of cross-indexed subject headings, where he puts note cards and will sometimes, I assume, write duplicate note cards to be in multiple categories. It's a huge thing. It's as big as a milk crate. And I've known other authors who did the same thing. I knew one who pinned all of those note cards under headings on a giant corkboard in his office. I've known others who had boxes, others who had big filing systems of them. And that third tip on how to read like a pro isn't really a piece of advice on how to read like a pro. It's a piece of very good advice for authors, not for readers. As a reader, you should keep a commonplace book. I think you would really enjoy it if you did. And that is just a notebook where you extract the bits and pieces from the book you just read that really stuck out to you. So you copy out long passages, you copy out short passages, you copy out your thoughts about a moment here and there, and you date that. And you date when you read the book, and then you just move on in your commonplace book. Plenty of authors and readers have kept those over the ages, and they are invaluable. They are wonderful for their only conceivable audience, which is future you. So that you pull down a commonplace book from your reading year 2018, and suddenly you are remembering these books. You are brought right back into them again. What was the weather like? What were you feeling? What part of the book really frustrated you? Some of those things, for some readers, not necessarily for me, but for some of those readers, some of those things fade pretty quickly. And a commonplace book stops them from fading. It captures them. So it's a very good idea, but what Ryan Holiday shows you in this video is not a commonplace book. It's a quarry. He's showing you a quarry. He is building a quarry of raw material for books he himself is going to write down the line and sell to you. If you're not going to do that, and I would urge you not to, that is not the way to read, and it's not the way to write either. I know that sounds presumptuous on my part. I have no books. Ryan Holiday's written 11. Some of them have done very well. He is a working author. Nevertheless, that's not a good way to write. That is a magpie way to write. That is a mynah bird picking shiny objects off the forest floor. It might work to get you a quote, an epigraph-filled book that you can then pressy on a TED Talk, but it won't really help you with any kind of organic system. And it takes a lot of work to make any kind of comprehensible, organic, philosophical system out of the few fugitive schoolyard bully precepts of Stoicism. It takes a lot of work to Frankenstein that into any kind of coherent system. You're certainly not helping that process by intentionally picking little bits and shiny pieces here and there. It is much more conducive. A giant box like that is much more conducive to your own future book or to a TED Talk that morons can then repeat at dinner tables for the next 6 months until somebody else comes along preaching digital minimalism or whatever. It's much more conducive to that than it is to getting better at reading like a pro. Okay, so I thought, but one way or another, those were the 3 videos that the algorithm suggested to me from Ryan Holiday, and it made me consider him again, because a number of you have put him forward to me as somebody that I should look at, and always the same way, protectively, proprietarily. I like this guy, and I don't want you to dislike him. But if you're gonna tear him to bits, better to get it over with. But you'll notice in this video, I have not torn him to bits. I watched, in addition to these 3 videos that the algorithm served up for BroTube, I watched a large number of his other videos, and he differentiates himself from the BroTube section of LieTube in the best and most dramatic way possible, which is that I don't think he ever lies. I don't think he ever does. I got the strong impression, just a visceral impression, watching his videos, even though he has B-roll footage and all the other fake crapola that LieTube loves and can't live without. You won't ever see a LieTube video that looks like this. Even though he has all of those things, I honestly believe those things are there because he considers YouTube to be a business, and that therefore it should be professional. Can't really fault him for that. We have some very, very good booktubers on this little corner of BookTube who are completely professional and have also never told a lie on camera. Listening to Ryan Holiday, I think he believes every word he says. I think he's completely honest. And whether or not you end up buying the philosophical system that such a person puts forward for you, a person who is going to earnestly talk to you about what he has learned from his own life experiences, is all worth listening to. So believe it or not, I'm actually doing a BroTube video in which I do not tell you what I usually say in these videos, which is, don't watch this person. Don't waste the time. You're going down a rabbit hole. You'll never get that time back, and the person isn't doing anything but lying to you. I don't think that Ryan Holiday is right about some of the things that he says, but he's never lying to you, as far as I can tell. Unless he's pulling the wool over my eyes as well. I don't plan on buying anything that he sells, so I'm not sure what would be gained by him by pulling the wool over my eyes. But I'm guessing that he's probably an honest broker, which means that you might want to watch these videos and see what kind of ROI you can extract from them. But anyway, that's your BroTube video for today. I am sincerely hoping that this Bro Watch video does not have the same result that the last few have. And I promise, for those of you who are here in the cheap rows at the Coliseum for the blood and viscera, I promise there'll be blood and viscera next time, I guarantee it. I go where the algorithm leads me. This time it happened to feed me someone who's fairly worthwhile. But nevertheless, I think firmly ensconced in BroTube, so worth a subject. But I'm gonna wrap this up. I've gone on way too long. I promise the next time there will be bread and circuses. But in the meantime, I'm gonna say goodbye for now, and I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.